Hey guys, welcome to or back to our channel.
Hello, so today I get to talk about May and everything that I have read in May in our official May wrap up. The beginning of the month was devoted to books that we had done vlogs for, which include the Frida McFadden books, which if you wanted to go back and look at that video, you can see in depth everything that we thought of with Frida McFadden.
The first book or books, I want to talk about that right now today. We did a full reading online. It's our top reading so far. It's Frida McFadden, and we read 4 books. We read The Housemaid, The Housemaid Secrets, Never Lie, and The Inmate. So all 4 of these books were fantastic. We both liked them all. And if you're interested in hearing more about these individual books or our reviews of these books, then just click in the description. If you are interested in learning more about what we thought of these books, I will post a link to the video in the description, and I will also put a link up here in the top left corner.
And then I also read The Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros, which I feel I have now talked about, I want to say 4 or 5 videos. So definitely there's a video devoted to The Fourth Wing if you wanted to hear more of our thoughts on The Fourth Wing, or you can watch almost every one of our videos and hear something about The Fourth Wing. It is getting a lot of talk, and there are a lot of people wanting to read it and have read it and going on and on and on about it, just like we are. I do think it warrants all of that, but you also have to watch when something is overhyped, because then expectations are high, and that doesn't always bode well for when you read it. But I do believe that it's worth the hype, to be honest.
The next book I read in the month of May is an ARC that I received from publisher Bramble Publishing, and it is Jennifer L. Armentrout's book, Fall of Ruin and Wrath. I reviewed this in its own separate video. On this channel, we are going to try to review every ARC individually and do some short videos on each ARC that we receive and read. So if you want to learn more about this book and you're interested in Jennifer L. Armentrout's New World, then just click into the description, and I will put a link to the video below and in the top left corner.
I have read, and there were 2 other books that I have read in May that I did not do as part of any vlog. So this will be the first time I'm talking about them. So fresh, original content for this video. So the first one that I read was called The Rachel Incident, and that one is by Caroline O'Donoghue. It is not out officially until June 27th, I believe it is. It's that week anyway. It's the last week of June. I believe it's the 27th. I had an ARC that a friend had let me read because she thought I would really like it, and she really loved it. And she originally had recommended to me Tomorrow, Tomorrow, and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin, which is a fantastic book. If you have a chance to read something, that would be a great book to read. That was out last year. She felt it had similar elements to it, so she let me borrow her ARC for The Rachel Incident. And I would love to say that I loved it, but I did not. I really had trouble getting through this book. I had to push myself through this book, and I do feel it had everything to do with, it was the book after I read, of course, The Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. And it's not that I had a book hangover from The Fourth Wing, but I was so entrenched into that world and that book, and I wanted it to keep going because the way it ended, you just wanted to know more. And, you know, obviously you have to wait for the sequel coming out in November. But I feel that's why I struggled with the jump from fantasy to literary fiction, I would call it. It's definitely in the same realm as Sally Rooney, which I did read Sally Rooney. I read Conversations with Friends and Normal People, and I feel both of those I really liked, and I don't know if I would say I loved them, but I did love the way Sally Rooney writes. I loved her writing style, and the characters I don't necessarily feel like I loved, but you did feel some sympathy for the characters in those books. In the Rachel incident, there are similar themes to Sally Rooney for sure, but for some reason I didn't feel any sympathy for Rachel, who is, you're told the story through her eyes. You meet her at the beginning. She's older and she's pregnant, and she finds out that a professor from her college days has a health crisis, has fallen ill, and she starts reminiscing and reflecting on the days of her college life. And the way the book sets it up, it does say that she had been in love with this professor. And though I feel she had strong feelings for the professor, when you start reading the past and what she went through, I don't know if I would have called it. I don't know. I didn't feel like she was in love. I feel like she was almost being pushed towards this relationship, I guess, from her best friend. And it tells the story of how she met her best friend, and she worked at a bookstore, and that part was interesting, but I don't feel like it was enough to really suck me into this book. And it was really brief, like her time at the bookstore. She ends up working for the professor's wife in the publishing world. And I guess I would say spoilers, even though I'm sure at this point, if you wouldn't be reading it based on anything I've just said about it. But if you do intend on reading it, I am going to say some things that would ruin the book for you. But so she is at the bookstore with this professor and her best friend, who she had thought was gay, and because he tried telling her that he's not gay, and so he was trying to say he's interested in women. And then she's shocked because she goes into the back room of this bookstore and they're making out, and her best friend and this professor end up having an affair, and she's on the sideline. She finds someone she starts dating, and she has a very angsty relationship with this guy. But he was probably the best part of the whole book. This character just was interesting to me, and I don't know. I felt me and my friend were talking about how that was the best part of this book, was the boyfriend that she had when she was in college. So a lot of series of events happen, and again, spoilers, but she ends up later, it's still in her college years. I can't remember how much time has passed, but I know it's about a year or two. And she gets accused of being the one having an affair with this professor by the wife. And he lets his wife think that. And the most interesting part of this book, not just the boyfriend, was a scene at a dinner party and how she handles being accused of having an affair with this professor, and she uses it to her advantage. And I felt that part of the book was very interesting, but I don't feel like it was very long. It was probably like a chapter, and I did think it was, it's going to start to get better and I'm going to end up really loving this book, but it never really got better. I had to keep pushing myself through it. And it ended on a weird, I feel like, twist of who she ends up marrying, and all the, like, how she ends up from her boyfriend, and then she gets older, and I don't even know if I want to ruin that part, because it's just, I don't know. I found it weird. I ended up giving it 3 stars because I do feel like it was fairly well written, but I feel like I wasn't in the mood for it. I feel like after Fourth Wing, I definitely was not in the right mindset, and I didn't want that emotion, or that, for the sake of me not liking it because of the time I was reading it, to reflect in a starred rating, because I feel if I hadn't read it right after Fourth Wing, I probably would have liked it a little more, maybe. I don't know. Might be just blaming Fourth Wing, and it might just not be a good book. There are a lot of good reviews on Goodreads though, so I'm not sure if it was just me or I just disagree with everyone who had read it. But that is my review of The Rachel Incident by Caroline O'Donoghue. I'm sure you guys are all going to be rushing to buy that book after I just talked about it. And what's funny is I was talking to another friend about it, and the more I was talking about it, she kept saying, wait, I actually really want to read this book. And I was like, I really don't feel like I'm giving it a good review, but I think there are just fans of Sally Rooney, and if you like that kind of book, I think you would want to read this book for sure.
The next book I read in the month of May is another fantasy novel. Surprise, surprise. I think if you watch any of the videos, you all know that I'm kind of in a fantasy era right now. So I was looking for actually Jade City by Fonda Lee in the library, and I could not find that book in my library, but I did find another book. It just came out in April. It's called Untethered Sky by Fonda Lee. It's a very short book, only a couple hundred pages at most. Let me see, it's 150 pages, so it's a very short book. You can read it in one sitting. And this book, I have mixed emotions about. It's really hard for me to review very short books because you don't get kind of a whole story, you get a short story. So, I feel like there's a lot of potential here. I really liked the writing. I just felt this book was kind of average. I didn't really get into developing feelings for the characters or the birds. You're following this young woman, and she wants to learn to ride these big birds. It's very dangerous. Sometimes the birds kill the riders. And so you learn about the process that she has to go through to tether to one of these birds, and what the birds are used for in this world and why they're important. And it's a very interesting story. I just felt it was a little slow moving for my taste. I just felt like parts of it were a little meh to me. Like I just wasn't extremely interested. I still really want to read Jade City because there have been huge, great reviews all over Goodreads, all over BookTube, all over Bookstagram for Fonda Lee's writing, and for Jade City, so I definitely want to pick that up, but this book kind of fell flat for me.
So the other book, other than The Rachel Incident, I did end May on a good note, thank God. Even though, because I started it with Frida and the Fourth Wing, I feel like I had a really good May. Rachel Incident was the only one I had a blip where it was not all that great. But I ended with Happy Place by Emily Henry, and I had been excited to jump into what looked like a lighter romance novel, because I had been reading so many psychological thrillers, and then I did fantasy, which it felt very serious fantasy. Even if I really loved it, it just was still darker themed, and I was looking forward. And even Rachel Incident was kind of darker. I mean, it was characters that were just so self-involved and just looking at only what was happening with them and their relationships. And I know a lot of college years are like that, but it just still didn't feel good to be reading that. And I wanted something, I guess, happier, lighter, because I don't feel like I had anything like that. So though I wouldn't say it was necessarily all sunshine unicorns, Happy Place was lighter than what I had been reading, and there were a lot of it got very emotional at the end of it. It made me emotional at the end of it. So Happy Place was told from the perspective of Harriet. They call her Harry, and it's about her relationship with Win. And throughout the book, it starts to get more and more, I feel like, heavier in terms of emotion, because she really misses him. And the premise is that they agree to go to this vacation with these friends that they have had since college. And they hadn't told their group of friends yet that they had broken their engagement. And the reader still doesn't know why they have broken their engagement, just that the engagement is broken and they're unexpectedly on this trip, this vacation with their friends, and they haven't told them yet. But because two of the friends are engaged and going to get married, and also this is the last time they're going to be at this house that they vacation in Maine because it's being sold, they don't want to ruin the mood or bring everyone down with their relationship problems, or that of the sad fact that they're not together, and everyone's used to them being together and think they're like the model relationship and meant to be together. So I thought it was going to be more of a almost like a romantic comedy and lighter in theme. And though again it was lighter than most of the things I've been reading, I felt it ended up having this emotional, tense feeling throughout it as you're finding out what happened in their relationship. And Win had been depressed because his father had passed away, and they end up having all these problems within their relationship. And it wasn't as light as I thought it would be, but I also really loved how it was written. I liked this group of friends. I liked how they interacted, and I felt drawn to the characters, especially Harriet and Win, and I was rooting for them, and I wanted them to be together because they just seemed like they did belong together. So I did very much enjoy reading it, and I gave it a 4 stars at the end of reading it. I love Emily Henry. I read Book Lovers, and though when I read that one, I wasn't as big of a fan of it, I still love delving into the romance genre after I've been reading serious. I feel like it's always this very nice, light way to kind of cleanse my palate, I think I said before in a video, and then it helps me kind of center so that I go back into a different type of book. I tend to read a lot of more serious psychological thrillers, and sometimes you just need a break from that. So I tend to pick up either lighter fiction or romance. And I was really happy that I picked up Emily Henry. I would recommend it. I think it's especially a summer beach read. I think it's perfect for that. I would recommend it to anyone who reads romance. I think it's a good book. So that is my May wrap up, and I'm already started on the book that I'm going to be talking about in June. So check back.
Last book I read that I have a physical copy of is another ARC. It's Inkblood Sister Scribe by Emma Torres. I have done a full review for this ARC. I will link the video in the description below and up here in the left hand corner if you want to check out what I thought of this book. This book has been released, so you can go get a copy of this book right now if you'd like. The next book on my list is a book that I read through audiobook. I borrowed through my library. I don't have a physical copy of it, so I'll just put up a picture on the screen right here. And that is The Ceremony by Robert B. Parker. This is a book in the Spencer series. It's the 9th book in the series, so I'm finished book 9. I'm going to be moving on to book 10. And these are just really old. These were written in like the 70s and 80s. So these are old novels following a gritty private detective named Spencer. I enjoy reading all these books. The humor is I find the humor really funny in these books. So if you are interested in some kind of gritty private investigator detective type novels, then I highly recommend you check these out. The final book I read in the month of May is called A Door in the Dark by Scott Wrightington. I listened to this on audiobook borrowed from my library. I also received a copy of this book through Eldwis, so I had a digital copy that I would also read, like switch back and forth to depending on my setting. So this is another fantasy book. It's kind of YA, I would say. I don't know if it's classified as a YA book, but you're following these kids that are in a college and they're graduating from college and they're trying to find their next places in the world. And you have this kind of rich boarding school that they're going to, and you have, of course, like the Richie Rich kids, and then you have the tuition kids, and they are scholarship kids, I guess, type situation, and they all meet at this bus stop to get transported into the school, and something goes wrong and they end up on the other side of this world in the wilderness, and they have to do without their magic. For the most part, they have to ration their magic, I guess is the right way to say, and they have to try to get back home. So you're following their adventure of them trying to get back through the wilderness, cross this mountain, and get back into their world, and along the way. So this is a good book. I felt it very entertaining, very interesting setting, and very interesting world. Very dark. I mean, it's called A Door in the Dark, but the feeling, the vibes from this book is sort of a dark setting. What I was envisioning in my head was always kind of dark. Dark buildings, dark entryways, you know, nighttime. It's also dark in the sense of there's some very bad things that happen in this book. You come across some very mean, dark characters, but this is a book that is right up my alley. I felt like this book might be a part of a series. I think there's more to be written in this story, so I'm hoping that another book in this series does come out, and I will definitely be interested in picking it up. Those are all the books we read in the month of May. If you have read these books and you agree or you don't agree, please feel free to comment below and let us know.